First, I just want to say good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to today's event. It's Retain the Brain, how to age-proof your most valuable asset. On behalf of everyone at Paragon Wealth Management, I want to thank you for joining us. This is a topic that hits close to home for many of us, how to stay sharp, focused, and in control of your cognitive health as we age. Today's conversation will offer some surprising, practical, and even powerful answers. Big thank you to Hartford Funds for partnering with us on this event and for the ongoing support for both our team and most importantly for our clients. Their commitment to education and thought leadership continues to bring value to the work we do. Now, we're especially excited about today's guest speaker. Some of you may remember Tom Barrett, Managing Director of Applied Insights at Hartford from our live Finances on Tap event at PJ Wellingham's a little over a year, or I guess about a year ago. The feedback we received from that session was so positive that we wanted to bring him back, and figured we'd offer it in a virtual setting for those that can't attend the live events, that we could offer this virtually. And then that way we can also more efficiently record it and be able to tap into it at any time. Tom has been with Hartford since 2006, brings a unique mix of experience across sales, digital strategy, and public speaking. His current role focuses on turning complex, forward-looking trends like retirement income strategies, legacy planning, impact of demographic shifts into clear, practical, and insights for everyday life. He also is skilled communicator, having led Harvard Fund's public speaking club for 6 years to get ready for an engaging and informative experience. Today, we're walking through the latest research and strategies around brain health and how it connects to your lifestyle, your finances. That's why you're here with us, and your future. So, take it away, Tom Barrett.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Greatly appreciate it. You just heard my name is Tom Barrett. I'm a managing director at Hartford Funds. You're getting a little taste of what I do for a living. As mentioned to the folks before this call, I just got back last night from Michigan. I am typically up in the air. I'm in 3 or 4 different cities a week all across the country, sharing this research and insight from a number of our unique partnerships. Today's discussion, Retain Your Brain, is research fueled uh, by our partner, Dr. Mark Milstein, who is a neuroscience researcher. But before I begin on that, I just want to give you a little bit of a backdrop on one of our primary relationships, and I'll kind of tie together why this all makes sense. Hartford Funds has been working with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a program up at MIT called the Age Lab since 1999. The Age Lab are some of the foremost experts in aging and longevity planning in our country today. There are over 40 researchers housed in MIT's School of Engineering dedicated uh, to this area of research. One thing they tell us is this: if there's a couple in our country today, age 65, the probability that at least one lives well into their 90s, so we'll define that as 92 or above, today that's a 50% probability. Get this, folks. The Guinness Book World Record holder, the oldest living person on our planet, her name was Jean Clement. She was from France. She lived to be 122, and she might have lived longer had she just quit smoking cigarettes sooner. She actually stopped at 117 years old. She ate 2 pounds of chocolate a week and conditioned her skin in olive oil. She rode a bicycle till she was 99. It's really a fascinating read about how somebody you don't anticipate here is holding the record. But we all have a lot to look forward to when it comes to longevity trends. But I think we're all prepared from a financial perspective for this retirement phase of our life. But I think we'd all agree that one of the most valuable assets all of us will have as we go through this phase will be our cognition. And I'm here to share with you that there's some very hopeful information. I'll now introduce you to Dr. Mark Milstein. And he says that we have strong evidence that suggests that simple lifestyle interventions can dramatically improve brain health and lower the risk of disease today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. And that is the goal of our discussion today. So, the first thing I just want everyone to understand is that when it comes to our brain's age and our chronological age, they might not be in lockstep with each other. Our brain might actually be aging at an accelerated rate or a decelerated rate from our chronological age. In fact, starting at the age of 40, the human brain on average will start to shrink around 5% every decade. Now, there are certain things that can be done to slow that degradation, but that is an average. Now, there is a segment of the population that brain researchers will refer to as super agers. This is a cohort that would be over the age of 70. If we hooked them up to a brain scanner, we'd find that their brains were looking fuller, healthier, plumper than that of somebody in a similar demographic. And at first, it was a little odd for me to describe a brain as plump and full. But as I mentioned to you, we have that potential for degradation. So this is certainly something you want to see. These folks oftentimes have memory recall like they're in their 20s or 30s. And you're hearing this and you're thinking, gee, that probably is very strongly tied to genetics. But I'm here to share with you, it's not as closely linked to genetics as we might have previously understood. In fact, what researchers tell us, if we have a positive outlook on aging, we have somewhere around a 35% reduced risk of dementia. And that seems kind of like a very vague statement, but this is what researchers found, particularly in this cohort demographic. The folks that had that positive outlook were more likely to engage in the routines, the habits, the exercises, the diets that were critical to our brain's health as we age. That was one of the most common links they found amongst this group. And then just to dispel a couple of stereotypes quickly, yeah, the one I think that is very common is, oh, geez, I'm forgetting this, that, or the other. What are you going to do? I'm getting older. That's just a normal part of aging. And what Dr. Mark Milstein wants people to understand is that when it comes to significant memory loss, we shouldn't consider it as just a normal part of aging. Rather, it might be a red flag. Now, don't get me wrong. If you've lost your car keys somewhere in the crevices of the cushion in your couch, that does not mean we have early onset dementia. I do warn you, though, if you're holding your car keys in your hand and you can't seem to find them, that might be a sign. And of course, I make light of this, but the reality is, once it starts affecting us getting through the focus and the agenda of our day, that might be something that we want to learn more about. Now, on a more positive side here about stereotypes, this one also very common, something that I've dealt with in my own family. I have relatives with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, therefore it's in my genes and it's inevitably coming for me. Now, researchers have concluded in just the last couple of years that when it comes to 97 to 99% of all cases of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, they say it is not definitively linked to genetics. Now, that's not to say that genetics might not play a role. It could heighten a risk, it could lower a risk. The important note here is we determined it's not the determinant factor in, in if you are going to get some type of disease like this. So let's discuss a little bit about what's going on up in our head. The average human brain, folks, it weighs around 3 pounds. However, all of us, every year, we're producing around 5 pounds worth of trash up in our head, toxins, waste. When I say that, what I really mean is there's broken down enzymes, there's leftover proteins, just all part of being alive. It's floating around in our head. And there is a mechanism that our brain has to cleanse itself of this buildup of waste and trash. But as you can imagine, as we age, our brain's effectiveness of that cleansing can diminish. On the left-hand side on the screen, I'm showing you all three healthy looking brain cells. There are three of about 80 billion that are currently floating around in our head. And you can tell they're healthy. There's no interference. They can make a connection with each other. However, on the right-hand side, I'm showing a specific type of trash buildup that is prevalent in Alzheimer's disease. It's known as plaques and tangles. If you're not familiar with that terminology, the plaques represented by yellow here, they get in between the healthy cells and don't allow them to make a connection with each other. Then we have tangles, which will embed themselves within the center of the cell and cause all sorts of disruption. Now, if a disease as complex as this, it's hard to say if this is a cause or if it's an effect. One thing that we do know is it's present, right? So I'm sure everyone would agree with me that we want to try to reduce the specific buildup of this type of trash and waste up in our brain. I have some very hopeful news on that front. As it stands right now, there is an FDA approved blood transfusion therapy that can be done to help reduce this type of buildup. But as I'm mentioning, that sounds like it could be very invasive, very expensive, probably difficult to qualify for. However, just earlier in the year, I was up at MIT at an annual longevity planning summit. They bring a lot of smart people in the room from around the country. One of the keynote speakers was a medical doctor from Harvard. She was discussing something known as gamma wave therapy. Now, myself not being a PhD or MD, I'm only going to be able to give you the cliff notes, but this is definitely something worth investigating. Our brains operate on five different wavelengths. One of them is a gamma wave. They have developed a therapy which can be done at home. It's basically spending 1 hour a day. You watch a screen, there's some interesting wave length motion going on the screen. We're listening to a bit of a sound. And researchers are finding that this type of non-invasive therapy is effectively reducing the buildup of plaques and tangles. It's currently in third stage human clinical trials today, which shows us that there is a future right around the corner where we can have treatments done at home in a non-invasive way that can add years of cognition to our life. It really is a great time in terms of the evolution of this science. Now, as Phil kind of mentioned, we are in a financial professional setting. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there is a tangible benefit to us keeping our brain's health intact from a financial perspective when we're dealing with, this phase of our life. As you're noticing on the screen, it's suggested that by the time we are diagnosed with an affliction like this, the average patient is dealing with that somewhere around 4 to 8 years. It could be as many as 20 years. So I know when you're talking to your financial advisor that they've laid out this explicit idea that there is going to be an increase in cost as we age if we need some of these additional uh, kind of health benefits, like assisted living, nursing home, and the like. The trouble is, not to any fault of the financial professional community, but the memory care is a very specialized type of treatment that is typically not included in those type of hypothetical calculations. But it will cost somewhere around another $15,000 to $50,000 a year annually to deal with that memory issue. And so the bottom line is this: from the time of diagnosis, the average patient will spend somewhere around nearly $400,000 dealing with that disease. And so the more we can do to fight that, certainly the better from a quality of life standpoint, obviously from a financial perspective as well. And so that's why I want to get into the good stuff right now. Let's talk about how we can age-proof our brains. So tonight, the very first thing I'll recommend to everyone is that you get the best night of sleep you've ever had in your life. The reason for that is this: every night at the deepest stages of our sleep, we are undergoing a brainwash cycle. It's where our brain is cleansing itself of that buildup of trash and waste. And so you're noticing that it's suggesting here that we get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And the reason is because we all go through multiple cycles of deep sleep, these 90-minute repeating cycles of REM sleep. It's at the deepest stages of our sleep that we're going through this brainwash cycle. I'll explain what's happening. Our brains, they'll compress to around 60% of their original size. Imagine you had a dirty sponge in the sink. You need to kind of squeeze out all that grime and gunk. Is essentially what's happening in our head every night. And then there's a fluid that comes up from our spinal cord to help wash out that buildup. It gets sent back down through our spinal cord. It's processed through our liver. Now, folks, when I first learned this, I had a deep concern. I thought my liver was solely responsible for alcohol consumption. What I've learned is that our brain's health is at stake as well. So keep that in mind. But the reason why the 7 to 9 hours is recommended is because that allows us to get enough of those brainwash cycles in the course of a night to properly cleanse ourselves of that buildup. Now, since I don't have a live audience, I'll get in front of some questions I've had in the past. Some folks ask me, what if I get less than 7 hours of sleep a night? Am I in trouble? And what Dr. Mark Milstein will tell you is this: there is absolutely a segment of the population that can get all the brainwash cycles they need in less than 7 hours a night. They refer to this segment of the population as super sleepers. And the suggestion is around 2% of the population fall into this category, and the rest of us might kind of just be pretending that we do. But again, really, what we want to identify is if there's something getting in the way of the focus or attention of the agenda of our day, that might be the indicator that we need to be getting a little bit more sleep. Now, how to set you up to get to that perfect night of rest? I mentioned to all of you on the front end, these are all really simple lifestyle interventions, but they are backed by some dramatic scientific research. So the first one I'm going to mention is this. That we want to be able to make sure that we are in as dark of a bedroom as possible. Dr. Mark Milstein says that many, if not all of us, are sleeping in what he refers to as a modern dark bedroom. He says, yes, the lights are off, but there's a little red dot emanating from the TV when the power's off. The alarm clock has a bunch of light. The blinds to the room, they kind of only close to here, and the beam of light hits you in the face. There is an effect. A study done at Harvard and Yale found over the course of several weeks, a sleep study, that just a little bit of ambient light threw off heart rate, blood pressure, and autoimmune response. It actually had a tremendous effect on us getting to that deep state of sleep. And in fact, it's tied to something known as our circadian clock. All of us have an internal countdown clock within us that tells our brain when it's time to get ready to go to bed, and then our brain will start dosing melatonin to prepare us for sleep. That clock is activated every day by us getting around 5 to 7 minutes of natural sunlight in the first 30 minutes of the day. And so we really want to find an excuse to get out. It's more than just kind of opening the curtains. We do need some vitamin D to hit the skin. So if you're having that cup of coffee on the porch, get the mail, walk the dog when you can. This is going to be helpful to activate that clock. Now, one issue with this is if you're anything like me, you might like to unwind at night looking at your device, your phone or an iPad, a Kindle. And what's happening is there is oftentimes this blue light that is emanating from these devices that's conflicting with our brain's countdown clock. And all of a sudden it thinks maybe it's not time to go to bed and it'll delay that melatonin dose. And so the only recommendation is made here is that you don't need to get rid of everything in life that gives you enjoyment. If that's part of how you unwind at night, that's fine. But if you're finding that you're having trouble getting right to sleep, if you put that device down 1 hour before you intend to go to bed, typically you'll have a much better time getting to bed. Lastly, I think, especially in the summer, we can all understand this, but I'll be brief. But there is also research talking about the importance of temperature in terms of getting us to that deep state of sleep. Imagine it's really hot, you're tossing and turning, you cannot get comfortable. Your brain is communicating with your body. They're working in tandem to try to cool down your core body temperature. So maybe if you have a debate in your household, like I do with my spouse over what kind of a human level temperature is of the home, you can provide a little bit of scientific basis here because I like to keep it somewhere around 65 to 68, which is that ideal temperature. And my wife has it somewhere in like the third circle of Hades right now. But now I was able to bring some of this science to the forefront. I've still lost the argument, but at least I had the science. So let's move on now quickly into talking about diet for a second. It's important to note that diet is a lot more closely affected to our brain health than we might have previously understood. A lot of it is just boils down to the fact that there is inflammation that originates in our gut for many people, and inflammation shoots signals up to the brain. Our brain was working on its normal function. Now it needs to focus its attention on tackling that inflammation. So this prevents it from doing things like cleaning up that trash and waste that it's trying to work on even throughout the day. The good news is diet can actually be a key ingredient to fighting inflammation. I'm going to introduce all of you to a brain health diet. And the statistics are somewhere around this. If you stick to this diet fairly strictly, around 80% of the time, you have around a 35% reduced risk of dementia. If you stick to this religiously, nearly 100% of the time, it's around a 53% reduced risk. So what's going on? When you're looking at these ingredients here, fruits and vegetables, fish with omega-3, olive oil, nuts, beans, all of these foods would be in the category of anti-inflammatory. And so the way I liken it is this. There could be a fire in our kitchen. We could try to, fan those flames and make the fire larger, or we could try to douse them and put them out. And I think of this type of food in that light. It's not about subtracting everything in life that you enjoy. Again, it's about adding things that can provide anti-inflammation. One other thing I'll mention to folks is one of the few times Dr. Mark said that he got a standing ovation was when an audience member asked him if a glass of wine could be considered part of a brain health diet. He said yes. The crowd cheered. But it's important to note that while that one glass of wine might have some brain health benefits, there's antioxidants and such, a bottle of wine might start to be a detriment, right? It's all about moderation. I don't need to explain that to folks too much, but I bring that up because in our next bit of discussion around stress, it is important to know that a little bit of stress in our life can actually be a good thing, but it's about moderation of stress. So when we get hit with a bout of stress or anxiety, a hormone known as cortisol gets shot into our brain. It's one of the few things we know is responsible for creating new brain cells in the memory center of the brain. And so, next time you're at the grocery store and you're in a rush, it's 10 items or less, and the person in front of you has 15 items, and you're just you get that shot of stress. It's okay. We'll take our cortisol and we'll be on our way. The trouble that researchers say is this: when it comes to stress, oftentimes we are highly fixated on our past, we're hyper focused on our future. It's like a hamster spinning on a wheel, and we cannot get that wheel to stop. And that's where it becomes a problem. If we're constantly shooting ourselves with cortisol, that can start to have a detrimental effect. So the idea is that we want to be able to be okay with stress, but be able to identify it and take a break from it. I know this might feel a little bit like pseudoscience, but there's been some studies showing just the power of breathing exercises when you feel that elevation of stress. I'll do this once for everyone, and it'll be up for you to decide if it's for you. But when you're feeling that anxiety, what you need to do is breathe in calmness. You need to breathe out anxiety. And what research shows is the actual time it took to do that exercise allowed that hamster wheel to stop spinning. So it could be mindfulness, yoga, prayer, whatever the case might be, just to kind of help us take that break. On the right, you're noticing thorn, rose, and bud. This is an exercise that can be actually very helpful for yourself or with a spouse or family member. It's all about making sure that we're maintaining positive perspective. When you get home, evaluate your day and say, what was good about your day? That's the rose. What was bad about your day? That's the thorn. What are you looking forward to tomorrow? That's the bud. Why I mention this is that researchers tell us that we kind of peak at mental cognition and recognition around 83 years old. They define that as thinking that tomorrow will be better than today. Positive outlook is critically important to our overall cognition health. All right. Moving on here, I'm going to wind down shortly, but we'll talk a little bit about exercise. Understanding that just a 30-minute walk every day has tremendous brain health benefit. And it does not have to be 30 straight minutes of walking. We do not need to elevate our heart rate drastically. It could be 6 5-minute segments. It's just about getting that total in. And this is what Dr. Mark tells us. He says, if we are able to encapsulate in pill form the benefit of that 30 minutes of walking every day, all of us would be lined up around the block to acquire that pill. However, if you're anything like me, you might not be super excited about going out for that walk or taking that jog, particularly in this heat. I once had a group at my office, a runners group at lunch. They convinced me once, Tom, you need to come on this run. You're going to love it. There's something called runner endorphins. You feel amazing afterwards. So I finally went out and did the run. At the end of it, I realized that runner endorphins were a complete myth made up just to get me out there to run. But, listen, I know some people really enjoy it, not for me, but I do sometimes need to remind myself to do it. If you set up that visual cue, that reminder, I put the shoes in front of the door each time I walk by. Oh, you know what? I need to go out and get my steps in. Another thing I've absolutely been doing is taking a little bit more action. I tried to win the award in the past to be the laziest human. I'd go to the grocery store, multiple laps around the parking lot, find the closest parking spot to the door, walk the fewest amount of steps humanly possible. That was my goal. Now I know if I park 25 yards away, I'm helping my brain's health a little bit. I'm getting my steps in, might be reducing my stress a little bit along the way as well. Finally, I don't think I need to really elaborate on the fact that if you're doing something you enjoy, you're more likely to do it. And if you have somebody to do it with, all the better. However, I will tell you that there's an epidemic MIT says Americans are facing that could be worse than smoking. They say it's loneliness. And so it really is important that we do have that support system. One idea I'll just share with everyone. If you're looking for a friend to go out and do yoga, play golf, just there's an art installation in town, a music fair. There is a service called Our Time. If you've not heard of that, it's kind of similar to Match.com for those over the age of 55. Our Time is all about our time together. It's a place where people in the community can meet on a platonic basis just to get out of the house and do activities. So it's just a community friend kind of network is how I would describe it. So something interesting, maybe not for yourself, but maybe somebody you know. And then finally here, the last bit I'm going to touch on is making sure that we're cross-training our brain. We want to constantly be learning new and different information, critically important to our overall brain health. One example I'll give you of why we got to make sure we're cross-training is this. Dr. Mark said once a client walked into his office, she said, "Listen, I'm doing Sudoku every day. My brain is rock solid. I'm good to go." Dr. Mark said, "Listen, doing Sudoku every day will make you an excellent Sudoku player. It's not necessarily challenging all of the areas of our brain, just that one component. We want to be absorbing all sorts, and it doesn't really matter what the medium is. The idea is to challenge yourself. Take a look at a 7-day week and challenge yourself 2 of those days. One day, challenge yourself to something of an academic nature. It does not matter. Learning anything you possibly would like to. Uh, and on the second of that 7 days, trying something of a physical nature where we are going to try to elevate our heart rate for around 5 to 10 minutes. Let me give you one example of how learning something new can be out of the box. Just a few years ago, my mother calls me. She's now 80, so she was in her late 70s, and her toilet was starting to leak. She was going to call a plumber. She was looking for my advice. It's like, "Mom, it's probably $90 to get the plumber into the driveway, and who knows how much he'll charge you from there. Had you considered watching a YouTube video on how to do it?" She goes online, she watches a YouTube clip. She goes to Home Depot. She spends $9 in parts. She goes home and fixes her own gasket on the toilet. Now she's walking around the neighborhood trying to underbid licensed plumbers for work. But what I have found is that she now has the confidence to go and learn all sorts of different things that maybe she was hesitant about on YouTube. It really does not matter. Lastly, I met a woman in Dallas. She was a viola chair for the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. She said you would be surprised how many people she tutors that are over the age of 60, retired. They always wanted to try this instrument. They just never found the time, and now they have it. And she says, "You're never too old to start learning." She has exceptional students at this phase of their life just learning for the first time. So the second bit, just that bit on exercise. I mentioned we do want to walk every day, but we also want to be balancing or sorry, challenging our balance and agility. Imagine when you were young what you envisioned an older person to look like. They oftentimes had trouble walking. There's a gait in their stance. There is a basis to this stereotype. Balance and agility is critically important to our cognition. When we're young, we're constantly challenging balance and agility, and as we age, we tend to shy away from it, where it might even become very difficult in general. Something like yoga, something non-invasive, just trying to get us moving a bit can be very beneficial. And so with that, I will mention the supplements only because there's a great experience that happened with Dr. Mark. A client approached him. She said she had found a memory boosting supplement. It was doing wonders for her. And he was a little suspicious. He said, "Oh, geez, that's interesting. What's the name of the supplement?" And she goes, "Ah, crap, I forget." But the reality is this, there really isn't a magical brain boosting supplement. Supplements can be very beneficial to us if there is a need. We just don't want to be going off of what a friend is suggesting or Good Morning America said you got to take your zinc. If you're feeling like there's a deficiency where a supplement can benefit you, go to your medical doctor and get some blood work done and kind of see where those numbers fall. That is going to be the best course of action. So we did add this extra supplemental piece here just because at the end of many of our discussions, lots of people would ask us about X, Y, and Z supplement. And the answer is it really does depend, but your medical doctor always will know best. And so, with that, I'll kind of leave you all with just some further ways to explore this information. If you listen to any podcasts on Spotify or Apple Music, if you were to plug in Dr. Mark Milstein's name spelled here on the screen, he's been a guest speaker on at least a dozen podcasts I have found. You can listen to him talk about just diet for an hour or just sleep, just exercise, wherever you want to focus your attention. He'd also written a book. I'm not a paid endorser, but it is an excellent read. It's called How to Age Proof Your Brain, available on Amazon. But I'll leave you all with a quote here. Dr. Mark says, "A sharp mind into older age isn't just a bit of luck. It's within reach for most of us." And I hope at the end of this, you all feel that same sentiment. I thank you for joining us and hope to see you all soon.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Second time that I've seen this presentation, and I love it. And just to summarize, I broke it down to five things that I learned. You want to sleep at least 7 to 9 hours a night. Try to have a good balanced diet with a glass of wine. Um, keep your stress low. Exercise, get moving, walking, whatever you know that you can do, and then cross training your brain, like learning new things and languages, instruments. So this was fantastic, and I really appreciate you taking the time today. I appreciate Hartford Funds for allowing you to be here and do this presentation. So again, thanks so much. I'm sure our clients will enjoy this. We will be posting this and sending it out via social media. And again, thank you so much, Tom.
All right. Thank you all. See you all soon.
Thank you, Tom.
Take care.